a little history lesson. In the great Mesopotamia, of which Babylon was the capital, and you might remember this if you know anything about the ancient Hebrew scriptures and where the Israelites were, there was the god Marduk. Marduk was the god of most of the corners of the universe. He had to play nice with some of the other gods, but there was this one god. Actually, she was a goddess, Tiamat, who just was spreading chaos all over the place, like most women, right? In a good way, women, in a good way. Keeping it fun, keeping it real. Marduk decided he didn't want to deal with Tiamat's chaos anymore, so he went to battle with her. It was a fierce battle. The gods had to align with one or the other, and guess who won? The winners always write history. Marduk won. And you know what he did with Tiamat's body? He used it to create the universe. And then he used another god's blood to create human beings. It's not a very enlightening story about creation, is it? And so the story that Mike read this morning is even more profound, isn't it? When you hear that was the prevailing wisdom, the prevailing myth of how creation was started. Creation is started with a word from a creating God who says, it's all good. Well, except for one day. Day 2, she doesn't get called good. Where are you, Mike? Did you notice that did you notice that? Yeah, it's a skip. Was the scribe so tired that morning when he translated that he missed that line, or did he not have enough coffee, or what was going on? Or maybe, later in Genesis, because it's the separation of the waters, and there's the flood story, and in the flood story, all the waters above rain down on the planet and create this flood. Maybe it wasn't so good. In the Hebrew, by the way, Mike, thanks for how you read that. It's a poem, right? And you hear the lyricism of it and the repetition of it, and your voice is very calm and helps us to hear. Thank you. In the Hebrew version, there's one word right at the beginning. It's tohu vavohu, tohu vavohu. I learned this in Greek in seminary. It's a word that isn't used anywhere else in the ancient text, and it doesn't occur anywhere else in any other ancient writing of the day. And so we have to guess with a word like that. We have to guess what the meaning is. And so what we read is God's Spirit or God's breath or the wind, all the same word, blows over the tohu vavohu and creates order. Now, given that other story you just heard, it makes sense then that the tohu vavohu is chaos. So God breathes over the chaos. In some English translations, you'll hear wasteland or formless and void. God's Spirit breathes over that chaos and creates order, something beautiful, something good. It's also worth noting that God creates with a word. Words have power. We speak realities into being with our words. So it's imperative that we choose our words carefully, thinking about words that bring joy and hope and mercy and forgiveness and grace and healing and justice and truth. And then notice, when God creates human beings, well, actually, when gods create human beings, because the verse says, let us make humans in our image. When gods create human beings, they're created in the deity's image. And created to be creators. Some of you know this already, right? You're artists, you're musicians, you're singers, you're teachers, you're innovators, you're people who bring beauty into the world. Some of us struggle with that. What? I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. What can I do that's creative? And yet we're all in God's image. And then we could use Jack Riddle to give us a poetry lesson. Where are you, Jack? Because there's all this repetition that teaches us what's important in this text. And there's symmetry. So for instance, there are 3 sets of 2. On day 1, the light and dark are created. And on day 4, the lights to rule the light and the dark, then named day and night, are created. On day 2, the waters above and the waters below are created, are separated. And on day 5, the birds and the fish are created to dwell in those spaces. On day 3, the land is separated from the seas, and the creatures are created to dwell on the land, including human beings. It's beautiful symmetry. So there's one other word in this text that we have to always deal with. And sometimes the word is translated dominion over or rule over. It's what human beings are called to. And the actual word in Hebrew is best translated as steward. That human beings are to steward the creation. This means to help it be what it is. So to help creation continue to remain good. To deal with anything that gets in the way of its goodness. It's been here a lot longer than we have. Through traumatic change of asteroids and millennia of time, inch by inch, cell by cell, genetic code by genetic code, it has morphed to maintain its well-being. Perhaps we can learn from creation. Maybe first that it means slow and steady, evolving for the sake of our well-being, watching for what works, paying attention to the implications of our actions. What else might we learn from creation? Mary Oliver, in the contemporary reading, What Can I Say, suggests the leaf has a song in it. What can we learn about singing from the leaf? And the stone, the face of patience. What can we learn from the stone about patience? And inside the river, there's an unfinishable story. We are somewhere in it, and it will never end until all ends. What can we learn about storytelling from the river? Take your busy heart to the forest, she writes. In our world filled with stress, for our own thriving, we need to develop habits that contribute to our well-being. The book that I mentioned has wonderful examples, but there are other sources. Google, how can creation teach us about self-care? Let's consider the trees as one more example. Trees have evolved, as you know, over millions of years. We share 60% of the genetic material with trees. If you look at the canopy of trees, you'll notice that the trees grow until they're going to bump into another tree. And then they stop right there, as opposed to taking the sunlight from another tree. Trees, when suffering a threat, are able to spread messages through the wind and through their root systems to communicate with other trees that there is a threat coming. And the other trees can prepare for that threat. Trees are remarkable beings, remarkable teachers. 9 years ago, you created a creation justice team. You began to imagine how to live out a calling, to care for creation, to address the climate crisis, and to seek justice for those affected by climate change. You wrote a covenant and voted on it as a congregation. And in September of 2016, you became a Creation Justice Church in the United Church of Christ. You are the only one in Michigan, if I read their website correctly and it's up to date, one of 320 churches in the denomination. That's pretty remarkable. 2016, so 9 years ago. This is what our covenant says. We, the members of Douglas Congregational United Church of Christ, in affirming the divine gifts of creation and our connection to God, each other, and the world around us, unconditionally commit ourselves to the intertwined responsibilities of caring for creation and seeking justice for the oppressed. With an awareness of how the abuses of creation inevitably cause human suffering, and how factors of race, class, and global inequality inevitably cause some to suffer more than others, we dedicate ourselves to this calling. We desire that these deeply felt commitments be reflected in all the dimensions of our congregation's life. We further resolve to extend ourselves beyond the walls of this church to make good on our promises to God, our Creator, to Jesus, the Redeemer of creation, and to the Holy Spirit, the Sustainer of creation. That's pretty profound. I'm honored to be with you on this journey.